Okay, so the first drill that we're going to be doing is called cone layups. You use it from anywhere from youth to college to pros, I'm sure. The basics of the drill is that the players are going to be lined up at half court, probably divided on both sides of the court just for numbers. There's going to be a cone at around the 3-point line, a little bit like even with the one elbow, and then the second cone is going to be closer to the basket at the elbow on the opposite side. So the players are going to come down and they're going to start at the first cone. They're going to do a change move at the first cone, dribble towards the second cone, and then they're going to do a change move at the second cone, crossing across the key and finishing on the opposite side of the basket from where the second cone was. And this is a series, so you can start with just doing cross. So you cross at the first cone, cross at the second cone, and then once the first player comes back around, they would go cross at the first and then go between the legs on the second. And then the third would be cross behind. And then you can do the different variations, like you can start with between, and then usually towards the end of the drill, it's just a free-for-all, and you choose whatever change move that you think you need the most work on, or the ones that you just feel like would be game situation for that. Just some keys to that drill are just to staying low with your dribble. You want to set the defensive player up, so you don't just want to like do the move in urgency. You want to make sure you change speed and direction, so you want to slow up and then go down for the move quickly and explode past the cone. You have the option to finish on either both feet or just one foot, whatever you prefer with layups. It's best to practice both. And then you want to make sure you're going into the layup like you're receiving contact instead of shying away or floating away or just flicking it up. You want to make it as game-like as possible. So you want to go into contact and then finish strong. And then just, like, as always, keep your eyes up while you're dribbling the ball. That we're going to be doing is called defensive triangles. Essentially, it's for defense. There's going to be 3 cones set up in a triangle. The players are going to start at the cone that makes the right angle, and so they're going to sprint forward to the first cone, and then once they get close to the first cone, they're going to chop their steps and close out. Once they reach that cone, they're going to side shuffle at a diagonal angle towards the next cone. Once they get to the next cone, it's going to be even with the first cone, and then they're going to side shuffle to the right towards that last cone, and then they would do it for 30 seconds at a time. So just repeatedly as many times as you can, and as game-like as possible to go quick and with the ball handler. Of course, there's going to be no ball handler because it's an individual drill, but you want to make it as game-like as possible, as I said before. Just some keys to this drill are to stay low the entire time. You don't want to, if you stand up, somebody can blow right by you if they have a ball. If you're really in defense, the lower player is always going to win, so you want to be as low as you can. When you're closing out to the first cone, you want to make sure that you have a high hand in case they shoot, but you also want to make sure you have one hand a little lower just in case they drive. You got to be ready. You got to chop your steps again to make sure that no one's going to drive right past you, because that can happen if you're too high up. When you're sliding backwards, when you're shuffling, like defensive sliding backwards or at that diagonal angle and sideways, you want to make sure that your feet don't cross, because that can also make you trip up. It's not as quick, and also that's like when you see on the highlights of somebody like breaking their ankles. So you just want to make sure that your feet are never going to cross while you're sliding. And then you just want to make sure while you're sliding, your hands are going to be like around here. They're going to be out wide. You got to keep, the hands are going to help you move the most with defense. If your hands are just by your side and you're sliding, you're not going to be as explosive and powerful moving whichever you want to go. And then once you do the certain way, for the allotted amount of time, you want to switch the angle. So you want to go forward, backwards to the right, and then sideways to the left. So for this drill, it's a shooting drill. We call it plus or minus some, I know NBA teams or other college teams call it beat the pro, I believe. So the player is going to start at the baseline. You can do this individually or with a partner as a rebounder. They're going to be a good distance away from the basket. You don't want to be too close to the block if you're a post, or if you're a shooter, you might be all the way up to the three-point line. It just depends on how you're comfortable and also what's going to challenge you. So the player's score starts at 0. It's a competition drill basically with yourself. You can do it to 7, 5, 10, whatever you feel comfortable with or whatever you have the time allotted for. So the player's going to start at 0. Every time you make a basket, you go +1. Every time you miss, you go -2. So you start at 0, and so say you make, for example, you make one, you're at 1, you make another one, you're at 2, you miss, you go back to 0. If you miss again, you go to -2. So you're focusing on just trying to get streaks and getting to that special number, whatever you desire it to be. Typically we do 7. So if you get to -7, you technically lose the drill, and you would repeat from that spot until you were to make it or until the time is done. And then if you get to +7, you beat that spot and you would move to the next spot. And we would do this at all 5 spots of the floor, so both baselines, the wings, and then the top of the key. So just some basics to focus on. You want to keep your feet angled, the basics of shooting, have your feet at the right distance apart, and be ready to shoot bent in proper position. You want to make sure you can follow through properly. It's a high volume of shots, so you have the potential to lose your form, so you want to stay focused on your own form and just getting that muscle memory of knowing how to do your shot at the perfect rate. And you want to continue to stay low. You might lose your leg power if you're shooting for a long time. This drill could be 10 to 15 minutes long, depending on how many players there are. If you're just by yourself, you can do it for however long you want until you get all 5 spots. So you don't want to be fatigued and lose any of that leg power that you were to have. The shots tend to waver if you're shooting for so long, or they might be short or too long, so you want to make sure you always get it on the mark as best as possible. And then mentally, you just want to always think about the next shot. Basketball shooting is a game of streaks, really, so if you miss a shot and you're mentally not there, you're more likely to miss the next shot. If you're focusing on the next shot and not worrying about the miss that you just made, you're more likely to go in streaks and not letting the previous shot get to your head. Okay, so for the last drill, it's a group drill. It's called 3-on-2, 2-on-1. It's mostly used to help for transition. It's also just a group drill that's good to use to get players to know fast break situations. So the way it works is it's a full court. There's 3 players on one team, 2 players on the other team. The 3 players come down the court with the ball. They're staggered on the wings and the 1 player in the middle. They're coming down to score on the 2 defensive players. Whichever player shoots from the team of 3, after the shot is up, there's only 1 shot. After the shot is up, that player has to run back on defense to play 2-on-1 against the 2 defensive players, or the 2 players who are just on defense. So the 3 players go down on offense. The 2 players play defense. They get a rebound or the made shot. A player who shot, whether it's a make or a miss, gets back on defense, and the 2 players come play on them. The reason I picked this drill is I really think it's important to focus on transition, especially when you're coming up and starting like the season and getting into games. I think it's really important with decision making. You get to know what's the best shot. Offensively, the players get to focus on staying wide. What is the best shot? Mostly when you're in transition, you want to get the closest shot possible because you do have the advantage. If you have 3 players and they have 2, or you have 2 and they have 1, you typically don't want to take a 3-pointer or far range or just a difficult shot. It's best to move the ball around as much as you can. And then defensively, the 2 players on defense can either decide to stagger themselves, or they can stack on top of each other, or they can stagger side by side. It's typically just a preference with the coach and everything, or the players themselves, whatever they think, depending on like if you have taller players or they have taller players, you get to decide what you want to do. You want to make sure you don't completely turn your body, so you focus on fast break defense. You don't want to fully commit to one of the players, but you don't want to also just let them come full speed at you. Otherwise, they're probably going to score every time. Just some other rules for the drill. The shooter, if a shot isn't taken, then the ball is turned over. Whichever player turns the ball over is the one that gets back on defense. And then when you're going into the 2-on-1 part of the drill, you're only allowed a maximum of 2 passes, because if there's only 1 player on defense and there's 2 of you, it shouldn't take more than 2 passes to get a good look at a shot or a layup.